Hello.
Hello.
I was thinking about all the times I've gotten on the call here, and when I've been out of screen, which seems like it's been for the past couple times that we've done a recorded call like this, I've come in screaming. Not today, man. Not today. Today's a different day.
Today is a different day. How you been, man?
Been pretty good. How about yourself?
I've been doing quite well. Digging the new job, and everything's been going well for a couple days.
Oh, yeah. That's very nice to hear, man. I'm happy to hear about that. It's nice seeing you back into a very familiar dojo for you, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. In fact, you could simply say that I'm back.
You see those tables? They just got turned. Oh man. And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way we measure this is we go from Ukraine to Uganda. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, man, I say that for a lot of our episodes, and I'm pretty sure from Ukraine to Uganda it's not that far. But if you go opposite ends of the globe, you go the long way around, that might be a little bit more effective. Tangents aside, this podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dazzling good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I am the only. I am the real Ryan Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the real Matthew James Durzik. And though neither of us are standing up, we will tell you what we do here on Hey, Listen to This. And it's kind of right there in the title. It's Hey, Listen to This. That's what me and Ryan say to each other every week as we pick an album and go through it track by track, pick out our favorites, pick out our least favorites, if there are any in either category, and discuss what makes the record what it is. And we've been kind of going freeform for the last couple months. Ryan, what did we do last week?
So, last week I was inspired by, a recent trip down memory lane, and that lane was filled with the genre nu metal, and, between the two options that I presented to you, whether it was Vladimir Putin or Mariah Carey, you chose Mariah Carey. Thus, by logic, we covered System of a Down. If you guys want to find out, what my, logic to my madness is, go a couple episodes back, listen to the end of that review, or actually listen to the whole review, then hear, what those two choices actually meant, and then you can understand my madness here. Tangents aside, which seems like I'm full of them today, the album we covered by System of a Down was their 2001 release, Toxicity, and for me, walking away from the review, I gained a new appreciation for the group. Prior to the review, I only knew the big singles, but it's always refreshing to hear the deep cuts. And that album had plenty enough deep cuts to make me a very happy man.
Yeah, and it gave me a new appreciation for the band too. More so a full appreciation because I'd only heard a couple songs before then as well. So if you want to hear our full thoughts on the album, go ahead and check that episode out once you're done with this one, or perhaps right now if you just want to pause this one and take a nice little hour and 40-minute detour. But this week, we're shifting only so slightly because we're going from the year 2001 to the year 2000, and we're going from nu metal to shock rap or hardcore rap or horrorcore or whatever you want to call it, because this album goes through a lot of those and more. We are talking about the second of the two seminal albums this year that are turning 25 in the year 2025. We covered Stankonia by Outkast back in January, and now we're going to be talking about an album that just turned 25 last Friday. Not yesterday, last Friday on the 23rd, and that is the Marshall Mathers LP by Eminem. Now, what is an Eminem? First of all, again, I have to know the real estate listings on your rock. I mean, the housing market's kind of rough right now. But secondly, if by some chance you aren't aware of what an Eminem is, historic Detroit rapper, pretty much put Detroit on the map on his own in the late 90s and early 2000s. Member of D12, considered to be one of the first major white rappers to not go with the traditional sort of basic flows. I mean, obviously Vanilla Ice did it first, but Eminem was the first to do it in a way that most of the hip-hop community was like, okay, all right, I see you. And yeah, became an international superstar for all the right and wrong reasons, was very controversial because of his lyrics, because of his style, because of his arrogance, because of his tone, to the point where, as we'll get into, politicians were actively going after him, and yet the industry loved him. It's a very complicated story with Eminem that really cannot fit into a simple summary, but that is the very bare bones of what Eminem was and is heading into this album. Now, some kids might be listening to this and thinking, hey, wait, Eminem, isn't he that guy who just released an album last year called The Death of Slim Shady? Isn't he like in his 50s now? Isn't he a grandpa? Yes, all of those things are true as well. But that is 2020's Eminem. We're talking about early 2000s, late 90s Eminem. And this guy was, for lack of a better term, a full-blown menace.
Menace is a little bit of a, well, I don't want to say an understatement, but it's a very, yeah, I would say that's a very, like, appropriate, like, descriptor of him. My relationship with Eminem, he was my first introduction to, like, rap music growing up. And it's funny that, growing up early 2000s, late 90s, when I would get, like, specifically this CD here, and, like, the prior album, the Slim Shady LP, like, I got the Walmart version, which is, like, the clean, like,
Yeah.
they don't have any cuss words, and, like, as, like, years down the road, when I heard, like, for example, like, the explicit version of My Name Is, I was just like, oh, I missed a lot here. And even, like, doing the review here today with you, like, I think I have listened to the Marshall Mathers LP, like, explicit before, but I never registered, like, some of the stuff that he actually says in this LP. But outside of, like, the clean, explicit, like, dynamics there, my relationship with M, is that, yeah, he got me into hip hop, and after, I would say, his album Encore, I shifted, like, musical focus to more of a classic rock sense. And I kind of went down that rabbit hole that, like, also saw me, like, really developing my musical taste, like, as you know today, like, indie rock, and when people ask, like, what kind of music do I like, I'm like, yes, that's kind of a big question, but it's been, like, Eminem, like, going back to, like, his earlier albums, earlier singles, like, as I was developing my musical taste, it didn't really sit well with me, especially considering, like, there's another rap artist, Kendrick Lamar, who got me back into hip-hop, like, I don't want to say fully, but, like, he was the first one who grabbed me by my, shirt and said, hey, I'm doing something pretty cool over here, and, like, that led me down a rabbit hole to check out, like, more, like, experimental, like, thoughtful, conscious hip-hop, and, like, I can still get down with some, like, horrorcore shock stuff, like, Danny Brown, but, all the while I was developing my hip-hop musical taste within those artists, Eminem, like, he really still, for me, didn't stand the test of time. I never really went back to any of his earlier singles and his earlier albums. I mean, I will say, though, when the Marshall Matters LP2 came out, I listened to that a couple times and I thought that was pretty good. But outside of that, he's never been an artist that I purposefully chose and purposely put on, so.
And for me, my relationship is pretty similar to yours. Because he was kind of my first introduction to rap as well, because one of the songs we'll be talking about on this album, the Real Slim Shady, was a big hit that was played on the radio back in early 2000, and I was just getting into pop music at the time, so among your Britneys and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Christina Aguilera's, you had Eminem, who hated all of them and somehow was being played as, among them. So you had that, and then I missed a lot of stuff too, and I never really got back into it until I was able to listen to it for the first time in around my senior year of high school, so around 2010, and that's when I got the full concept of what this album is and just how chaotic it actually is. Because, full disclaimer for those wondering, there's a lot of bad words on this album, and I'm not talking just your traditional cuss words or swear words. No, it's a lot. It's a lot. Because not only is it the foul language, but it's also the foul things that may not even need curse words to be like, oh, okay, here we go. And obviously we'll get into the themes and, maybe some of our own moral backgrounds as we go along, but for those of you who have any interest in this album, either before, during, or after listening to this episode, be warned, it's pretty heavy on the lyrical front. But, like you, I listened to the Marshall Mathers LP2 when I was in college, did like it, and ironically enough, I picked up a copy at a Goodwill not too long ago that, funny enough, was the clean version. And I was like, aw. But, to me, Eminem was started out as a singles guy, then became more of an album guy with a couple singles here and there. And I never really gotten too deep into him either, but this album has still stuck with me for a lot of reasons that we'll get into. So are you ready to get into it?
Yeah, and the way that I propose that we, tackling this, review here, I'm going to say let's do it in the same vein as we did the Outcast review, in that if there is a skit that's involved, whoever introduces that that section right there, for example, you'll start out with public service announcement, then you'll boogie on into Kill You, and then we can go from the flow there, if that's cool with you.
That is cool with me, and I will kick it off with PSA 2000. I really don't have a whole lot of thoughts about this because it's basically just Slim Shady saying, hey, you bought my album, suckers, in much darker language than that. The only thing that's funny about it, though, is, and I just thought about this as we started the episode, is that to hear anybody in the streaming era listen to this particular skit, they think, oh, well, joke's on you. I'm on Spotify right now. So how's that? But that being aside, after that starts, it gets into the first full track, which is Kill You, and right away, you get the themes of violence, you get the themes of anger, you get the themes of misogyny, and you get the themes of, hey, this is a character. Because the way that Slim talks about the things he's talking about, which is very much a collection of violent thoughts towards women and his haters and the parents of America, which he will do a lot on this album. He does so in a manner that is so evil to not be ignored, yet cartoonish enough not to be taken seriously, if that makes any sense. You listen to him spit these rhymes, which, by the way, very, very good job on a objective front. He sounds very polished, and the words come out for the most part, pretty good. Sometimes he gets a little wordy, particularly towards the end of the track. But for the most part, his flow is well versed up front. It's a very aggressive vocal. There is no doubt about that either. And he's taking jabs at the likes of radio DJs like Howard Stern, his mom, his wife, and then at the very end, he comes across and says, "I'm just kidding, I love you, ladies." So he knows he's messing around. Now, is this the most responsible way to handle a subject like this? No, it's not. It flat out just is not. Because while this is a way to remind yourself that he's not to be taken seriously, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to laugh at him either. You don't have to say, "Oh, well, he's just joking, therefore it's funny." Is it though? It's not really funny. And I'm not saying this to be the morality police to, put on my white collar and hold up the book, but nobody really should be talking like this. I know it, you know it, most of the audience knows it, and for the most part it seems like Eminem knows it. But the funny thing is that a couple people did not think about it that way, and there were at least two politicians, one from Canada, I forget his name, one from America, that being Liz Cheney, who actually publicly disavowed this track and made it a point in their positions of political power. And again, it's a very gnarly track to open up the album with, but it's the first track. And to me, that just is a beacon of laziness for a politician to be like, "Okay, listen to one song, I've heard enough, this guy's the devil." And it's just like, come on. Me personally, I think this track's alright. I think there are tracks down the line that make the arguments on this track a little better, and I do think the misogyny's a lot. It is not in my top 3. It is also not in my bottom 1, because I do have a bottom 1, and we'll get to it as we get to the end. But yeah, this is a very brazen way to start out this record.
So, yeah, whenever you were talking about, like, you don't want to be the morality police, where, like, waving your white collar and, like, holding up the book, I thought in the back of my brain, I'm like, oh, dude, if people are walking into this album with that mentality, oh, man, they're going to be in for one rough time, to say the least. So
they're going to need brown pants.
Brown pants, yeah, essentially. So, before I get into my thoughts about Kill You, in terms of this review here, I have a top 3, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I have a bottom 3 with this album here. So, yeah. And, Kill You did not land in either or. For me, it could have landed in a bottom track kind of territory because, the comments about his mother and what he wanted to do with her did not come across as, I don't know. It came across as edgelord for edgelord's sake. M does walk that fine line. Sometimes it's executed really well, and sometimes it's executed like dog shit. Here, it's kind of leaning on the dog part of the dog shit. But outside of the mother, section there, parts about Kill You that I did appreciate. That beat is really, really cool. To a, I don't want to say, well, maybe to a casual drive-by listener, they might be a little bit annoyed by that stop beat, but I feel like it works well within the context of the song, and especially with how well that chorus goes across. It works almost, I want to say seamlessly to my ears. And speaking about the chorus, I like how towards the end of the track, Marshall, interacts with the chorus where, I'm not going to really, talk about, what's in the chorus, but it almost seems like there's a chorus, he has a little, spoken part, within there, And I hear, I kind of, was able to gather that this song goes across very well live because of that chorus. So that's pretty cool. One part that I kind of did like that made the track stand out just a little bit was a part where he was talking about OJ and he got the machete from OJ and like how frantic his voice sounded there. It was a cool moment. And yeah, just overall though, another thing I want to highlight about the track is we get some epic foreshadowing in the first song here, when he has the section where he's talking about, painting the forest. So, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for the official conclusion on that story there. But yeah, Kill You, it's a fun track. And then just real quick about PSA, that voice that you hear, that's M's essentially using as like a puppet. His name is Jeff Bass. He's a producer who's worked on with Eminem on different projects. He factors into more of M's work that comes right after this LP. But yeah, I felt like that was a cool fact.
That is a cool fact. I actually either had forgotten that or did not know that based on my past history. But yeah, no, I agree with you. The beat on this track is good. Again, the subject matter is pretty wild, and I very much appreciate you saying that it's edgelord for edgelord's sake, because to me, a lot of this album, particularly tracks like this, remind me of either the ending to Scream, which I won't spoil, but you kind of understand where I'm coming from, mixed with that photo of Daniel Radcliffe holding the two guns meme, where he's just like, it looks like he's about to cause all chaos. It doesn't matter if he's part of it. That's kind of what a lot of this album sounds like to me. And I don't necessarily mean that as a compliment or a negative, but more or less a fact, or at least a somewhat opinionated fact.
So, booking on over to one hell of a whiplash, considering how Kill You came across. The next song is probably I would argue, probably the most iconic and critically acclaimed song off of this LP, and that would be Stan. And from what I was able to gather, M wrote this song specifically for a multitude of reasons, but he also wanted to prove to critics and maybe himself that he could write a serious song like this. And oh my goodness, it is a very effective song. And for those of you who haven't heard Stan, welcome to modern society, you Amish people who have yet to experience the real world. And secondly, there's a multitude of reasons why this track is fantastic and has gained as much notoriety and critical acclaim as it has over the years. I mean, the whole concept of the track is this crazy fan who's writing M letters, and with each verse, the disintegration of this guy's ego and mental state, it's very clear. And especially at the end of the second verse, when he's talking about harming himself and saying oh hey, and we should be together too. He starts to bleed on the edge of extreme creepiness. And then in the final verse, well, in the third verse, you get the story about him driving his car off the bridge with his girlfriend because he was drunk driving. And then in the fourth verse, the final verse, you get M writing back to Stan. And this song is very important for a multitude of reasons. One, to make sure that people don't put people up on a pedestal and don't get fixated on celebrity culture. And two, it's also to point out to a lesser extent that, celebrities are people too, and they need to be respected, and they need to be given I don't want to say grace, but patience, and just understand that they're humans at the end of the day. Outside of the lyrical content, the other elements of the production are fantastic. You get the sample of Dido's, that Dido sample there. And the thunderstorm effect is perfect. And also, like, the scribble effect that you hear throughout the track, where, like, like, we're writing letters, so that's an excellent touch. And, like, even, like, outside of those moments, like, the bass that's doing the beat, just everything about this track is just so good. It's one of my favorite hip hop tracks of all time, and well, I don't want to say that this track specifically influenced conscious hip hop to a modern day audience, because I feel like there's a rapper from California named Nas, and his, like, reincarnation, Kendrick Lamar, that would have maybe a couple things to say about that. However, for this track to gain as much notoriety as it has over the years is critically important. It's so good. Easily my favorite song on the whole album.
I'm right there with you. It's my favorite as well. And you expounded upon a lot of the reasons why that is. Because you're right. It's a fantastic story. It is a very serious song. And the sample's great. The engineering on this entire track is masterful. Not just the scribbles, not just the splashing of the car, not just the tires screeching and everything else of the thunderstorm, but it just works so well. And the way that it lingers off that third verse to just the bass and then kicks back with the beat into the last chorus, it's perfect. But I think the reason I decided to make this my number one track, among all those other reasons, is this. Not only is it, as you said, him writing a serious song that demonstrates that celebrities need space and fans need not go crazy, it's also, in a way, Eminem realizing and acknowledging the fervor that he creates with songs like the Real Slim Shady and the Slim Shady LP that preceded this one, where he realizes, hey, maybe what I am doing could go too far. Maybe what I am doing could cause something like this. And for him to be that self-aware, especially in contrast to songs like My Name Is or previously Kill You, as we just talked about, it shows a level of maturity that I think really is paramount to the understanding of him as an artist, him as a person, and this album as a whole. So for me, it was a little close, but this easily is my number one song on this album too. Stan is one of those songs that needs to be heard for anyone to understand this artist.
I agree with you. Well, obviously 100%. And for me, like, when it came to, like, selecting this as my favorite song, it might come across as a basic reaction to this album, but if I had to be honest with myself, if I had to put, like, 3 songs up for contention of, like, songs that I think are the best and the ones I look forward to for one reason or another, this song would easily be a number one, considering the other tracks on this LP. But I think we nailed Stan pretty perfectly. Are you ready to move on over to the next stretch here, which is Paul, followed by Who Knew? Who Knew Paul?
Yeah, not me, because this track, or I wouldn't even call it a track, but it is a track. It's 12 seconds long. My only note on it is, hi, Paul. Bye, Paul. It's not really much of a sketch. There might be more to it, but it's really not worth in the context of this album. It's just a phone call or even a voice message, whatever you want to say. Moving on to Who Knew. Basically, this is a track where Eminem, Slim Shady, whoever he decides to be on this track, probably both, calls out the hypocrisy of his detractors. He's calling out, parents for not watching their kids as they, look up to him, like we saw in Stan. He's calling out his fans who think he's a little more than just a regular guy. And for the most part, there is a bitterness and a smarminess on this track that seems pretty intense. Like it's basically 3 to 4 minutes of Eminem saying, "Listen, I'm not in control of you guys. So if you guys listen to my music that says to do something and you do it, even though you shouldn't do it, that's not my fault." So he's right. He's right in saying that if he says something, you shouldn't just say it because he said it. But there's just this very like, me type of vibe over the entire track, which I thought was kind of, it was rough at first, but on second listen, this track did get a little better. I appreciate the beat a little bit better. I thought it was pretty solid. It's not spectacular. I think the beat on Kill You and obviously Stan were better. This is a pretty okay-ish album track. It basically makes the arguments of Kill You better and less abrasively, but it's not a standout track by any means for me.
I'm a hair higher on this track than you. Like, it's not in my top three, but it's one of the deep cuts off the record that, like, it was refreshing to, like, dive into and, like, explore. You're talking about, like, the moments where M is trying to, like, turn the tables and turn the mirror back onto, like, the society and the parents that have criticized him for, like, incentivizing violence and, like, all these bad stuff that, like, is happening with their kids. But, like, one section that I really did like that exemplified this to a T is whenever he was talking about, like, going to see that Arnold Schwarzenegger, wow, I mispronounced that, but I'm going to roll with it, that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, where he's, like, shooting with an Uzi, and, like, seeing three little kids up in the front row screaming, "Go!" And he's just like, "Guidance? Ain't they got the same moms and dads who got mad when I asked if they like violence?" So he's just saying, hey, like, this is just basically part of society. Like, I'm just, creating music and, like, I'm just, like, doing my thing and you guys are yelling at me for it. Like, you guys are, there's video games, there's action movies. Like, why are you yelling at me? But there's that action movie scene they talk about, like, also he makes a comment about, like, makeup and a 12-year-old daughter. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. Another cool line that I did like is whenever he was talking about, like, watching his mouth, turning his eyeballs and turning them around. I thought that was pretty cool. Overall, though, like, it's a pretty solid track. I did like the chorus, especially with the strings. I felt like it flowed pretty well. Maybe, and no, I don't see a world where this can creep into a top three for me because it doesn't do enough, but I don't think it has to do more than it should. It's the perfect good album track for me.
I can agree with that. It's a pretty solid album track, and again, I think I appreciate it more than the first full track on this album. Because again, it's not as abrasive and it's makes arguments that are better. And yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's a better album track than Kill You was, but I think the only real issue of it is its juxtaposition. Like, it's coming off of Stan, but no, most tracks can't come off of Stan, so I'm not gonna hold that against it.
Yeah, and, like, I even, like, when we were talking about the transition from Kill You to Sand, we're like, oh, what a whiplash, man. But,
right.
Yeah, there's several moments in here where, like, for one reason or another, like, the sequencing works well or works, yeah, kind of iffy. But in terms of working well, I'm going to boogie on over to the next section here, which is the Steve Berman skit, followed by The Way I Am. And, like, the skit is basically sitting down with Steve Berman, a record executive, and the record exec says, hey, what the hell is this album? Change it or it's not coming out. And then the way that it transitions into The Way I Am is very seamless because it almost seems like in the first words said in The Way I Am, which are yeah, whatever, it could have easily just been the last words you heard in that conversation with Steve Berman. And maybe like it was supposed to be like it was probably organically supposed to be like, one complete package. And talking about the way that I am, what a great track, dude. Like for me, this was one of the tracks that big single growing up. I remember watching the video on TRL. Shout out to those who know what TRL is. You guys are the real ones out there. And throughout this track here, you get M diving into such angry passion, but it's focused angry passion, and it's basically saying, "Hey, like this is who I am, and this is how I'm dealing with being a celebrity now." And like you get moments like whenever he's talking about asking people to leave me alone when he's in the streets eating or feeding his daughter, just to don't come to speak to him. And he's like, I don't know you and I don't owe you a mother clucking thing. And there's several other instances in the track here where he's basically trying to distance himself from obsessive fans, just trying to say, hey, please respect my space, but when I'm taking a crap, don't bother me, let me have my peace. It's a great track. The passion behind M's voice again is just so good. The beat is really good. I like the old school feel to it. And the motif that the keys or the synths do in there, it's almost hypnotic. And also the chime is a great touch. I'm a fan of that. The chorus is great. And we've arrived at another favorite track of mine. This is my second favorite track off the whole album.
I pretty much agree with you on a lot of things. The transition from Steve Berman into The Way I Am is great because you get that little record scratch or the little scritches at the start that transition from one to the other so well. And the Steve Berman sketch is basically exactly what you said it is. I thought it was pretty good. But the beat is really, really good. Dr. Dre, which M shouts out in the first couple lines, great work by him on this track. And to me, what made this track stand out is the fact that we talked about this a lot on Who Knew, is Eminem saying, hey, here I am dealing with the hypocrites of the earth and people who won't leave me alone. And he's making a lot of the arguments he's made on the previous tracks already, but the flow is great. It's so, so good. Like, what makes this track so much better than Kill You or Who Knew is just the fact that he is pretty much becoming one with the beat and one with the flow of his rap. And the way he stops to let the echo carry on the momentum of his verse whenever he can't really fit in the rhyme, like, that's a smart decision on his end. And yeah, I can't really add too much more to what you said. It's a great track. Ironically, I didn't grow up with it as much as some people did. Like, to me, the only track I really knew of him was The Real Slim Shady, which will be the next track we talk about. But The Way I Am is just a solid, great performance. Like, I would say flow-wise, it reminds me a lot of Lose Yourself, which is considered to be his best track. And if you're performing like that, it deserves honor. I have this at number 3.
All right, man, I can really respect that. And one other thing I want to shout out about The Way I Am, we get more in sync, strays here, because apparently Eminem at this time had a huge, I don't want to say a huge thing with NSYNC, but it's littered throughout this album where he's just you know what, NSYNC, screw you guys are stupid. But just at the time when I was growing up and the kind of music I was listening to and how NSYNC was very popular, this is hearing those bars in this track and through a couple other tracks here, really kind of stuck with me. Maybe appreciate the LP a little bit more. But you ready to finish off this very iconic 1-2 punch in this LP here by going over to the Real Slim Shady?
The Real Slim Shady, certified suburban classic. It's iconic for a number of reasons. I mean, you get that beat, which features like, I guess, a harpsichord, maybe, possibly. It has that very like harpsichord synth feel to it. And this is basically Eminem just taking down Hollywood and suburban America line by line, note by note. Pretty much anyone you can think of. Christina Aguilera, Fred Durst, Carson Daly, Will Smith especially, Pam Anderson, Tommy Lee, Tom Green even. Like, the first two verses are just him going after every celebrity who was popular at the time and just being like, hey, what gives? And this is just a funny track. Like, I know it's a little cruel, but it's a very funny track, especially when you get to that third verse. He's talking about being in the nursing home and how one of his fans is probably spitting on your onion rings at Burger King, doing donuts at the parking lot. Like, obviously the video makes a lot of these visuals not necessary for you to envision, but even if you did, it's just hilarious. His flow is great, and the one little touch I did like about this track is the fact that the chorus starts before the downbeat. So like the way the beat goes 1, 2, 3, 4, like the chorus ends before the 1 and it starts before the 1, which is kind of a nice little touch that sort of helps keep the song moving along. And it's not something that a lot of people would talk about because of everything else that's going on lyrically in the song. And yeah, it's cruel. Yeah, it's cheesy. Yeah, it's corny. Yeah, it's pretty, chaotic. And it doesn't necessarily have quite the same flow as The Way I Am. It doesn't change the fact that I could pretty much recite every single word of this song line by line on any given night. It's a classic for a reason, and we have completed my top 3. This is at number 2.
I can totally respect that. I mean, this song is iconic for a reason. For several of the reasons that you mentioned. You talk about, like, his attacks on, like, random celebrities. Well, my favorite attack was the Will Smith line where he was bragging about not cussing in his raps to sell records, and then his response is to cuss at him. I thought that was a really great touch. My favorite part of the whole track is the top, like when he's talking about like being at the Grammys and switching seats with Christina Aguilera. I can just really picture the music video and the part where that happens. Like it's part of my childhood. It's part of Ryan Kern's canon here. And outside of the other moments that you mentioned, a couple things I want to shout out. The intro is perfect, where he gets on the microphone and be like, "Well, the Real Slim Shady, please stand up. We're gonna have a problem here." That's perfect. And also in this track here, you get other lyrics about addressing parents, basically saying hey, kids are gonna discover the dark side of reality soon enough. So just let them have fun and all that stuff. So, and one other thing that I do want to mention is the sound effect when after you hear Am talking about the part about the cantaloupe and the people treating each other like cantaloupes. I'm not going to try to go too much into the lyrics there. That's great, especially how the that weird sound effect. That's great. However, with all that in mind, this song did not crack my top 3.
Okay.
Yeah. And when we get to the third favorite track, later on in the album, I'll explain why. But, I'm going to give a little bit of a hint to what that favorite track is. It is a track that I got introduced to, probably post-high school, early college, and it's a very bold track. I'm just going to leave it at that.
I have a feeling I know which track that is, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I can understand this not being in your top three. There was a part of me that almost considered other tracks for my top three, and maybe this one got a backseat. But again, it's so ingrained in me that I could not do it. I mean, the little guitar at the end is a nice touch. The way he references "we ain't nothing but mammals" in the first verse, I appreciate that line. I mean, there's a lot in this song, and it's a lot of good.
So, booging on over to the next track here, which is "Remember Me," and we get guest verses from RBX and Sticky Fingaz. Fingaz spelled with a AZ at the end. That's why I pronounce it like that. For me, this track here, it's kind of hard going out of the 1-2 punch of "The Way I Am" and the Real Slim Shady, and to stick the uppercut in terms of the boxing match that we have with this LP. And I feel like this track it's a little bit of a miss. It could have been a bottom track for me, to be honest with you. And I'll get into why. At least it opens up pretty nicely. You get that spray paint effect. The production there was really good. The bomb effect was great whenever RBX is talking about Hiroshima being the bomb. It's an overall very smooth beat. One of the parts that I really liked in here is when M actually gets his verse in, and that's that whole 6 minutes part wherever he's saying I promise the critics that I wouldn't cuss for 6 minutes, and then you get that little 6 minutes, Slim Shady, you're on. That's a cool part, and the way that the whole track ends with M basically saying, asking the audience, "Remember me? Remember me?" That's a fun part for me. However, what I will say, though, what kind of just made this track just a wee bit of a snooze is the guest verses. RBX's verses, his verse is fine, but I kind of, the whole, I grab the mic and get down, syndrome, and, the whole, part about for this one they scream "X, you retarded," that a lot of the criticisms I'm gonna have about this LP is it's very much a product of its time, and a lot of the stuff has aged like sour milk. So that this is a sour milk section. Outside of RBX's verse, Sticky Fingaz, his verse is solid. Nothing really too much to really criticize here. I like the line whenever he's talking about life being a being a bitch, and better come better than to be a competitor. Basically just trying to motivate the listener to just really take life by the horns. But yeah, overall though, Remember Me, the one section kind of did ruin it for me. And when it comes to this kind of music and this kind of rap from the earlier 2000s, when it has the multiple guest verses, sometimes they don't stick the landing, and for me this track didn't.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I will say I'm probably a little lower on RBX than you are, because not only did I find those lines particularly outdated and somewhat offensive, I just thought his flow was pretty bad and weak. It was he didn't have really much of a flow. He used a lot of echo and just sort of relied on his edgelordness to get by, which I thought was pretty much of a nothing burger. I thought Sticky Fingaz honestly had the best verse on this entire track. His flow was fantastic, and was a very nice introduction to him, or perhaps goodbye to him, because I don't think I've ever heard anything else by him. And then Eminem is fine. His rapping is a bit aggressive, particularly on the choruses. I thought the screaming was a little much, but I did like the 6 minutes part, and I kind of almost wish he was cautious enough to try to go a full 6 minutes, but obviously that was never going to happen. But yeah, I think this track's okay. I probably would put it in the bottom tier of tracks. It's not bad enough to be a bottom track, but it's definitely one of the lesser tracks for me. on this album.
So once we get into like my other bottom tracks here, I would be interested to maybe do a quick reflection in that if the album were to be resequenced, if Remember Me was to be like one of the later tracks, would my bottom three switch out? But before we dive into the back half of the record, Matt, I got a question for you.
And what is that, Ryan?
If the dear listeners out there are really just appreciating our ability to dissect music and introduce them to different artists along the way, and they want to help support what you and I do on a week in week out basis, what are some ways that they can, help support the cause and help us continuing to be the real, hey, listen to this?
What they can do is, again, keep on listening to this. They can find us on any platform of their choice, whether it be Spotify, whether it be Pocket Cast, Apple Music, several others that we are a part of as well. We are on social media. We have Facebook, we have Threads, we have Instagram, we have Blue Sky, and we also have a YouTube page where we upload video formats of our podcast every week. So if you are on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and however you find out about us, whatever links you use, whatever platform you use, just share it on your socials, tag us if you'd like, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell someone you haven't talked to in a while, say, hey, I remember you liking this album a while ago. This album is 25 years old after all. So very much you can get the word out and continue to support us. Also, if you want to contact us directly and you don't know us personally, you can reach us out by going to our email. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. That's ttheylisten@gmail.com. And ttheylisten is also our username on all of our social medias, is that if that's how you want to find us there. So again, for those who have listened through this wild journey through genres, decades, and disagreements, and mostly agreements, thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because we love doing this and we love you listening to us do this. So
Agreed. And also, thank you to being such a good co-host, man. It's been a pleasure, bouncing different ideas off of you, and I feel like we complement each other in a very, very synergetic fashion. And look at me using the word synergy there.
Yeah, there you go. And likewise to you, sir. We do make a great combo. We have for many years, not just on air but off air as well.
So pivoting on over to the back half of the record, you ready to get back into the record with "I'm Back"?
Yeah, let's get back into the record with "I'm Back." And this track very much feels like a Real Slim Shady light, if that can even be assessed, because a lot of the subjects he's talking about on this track are, again, he's talking about politics, he's talking about morality, particularly with references to Columbine of all things, references to Christopher Reeve, and doing so in a manner that basically says, I know no boundaries, all targets are targets to me, and I'm just going to come at them one by one. So the beat, I think, is pretty good. I do think the use of the kids on the choruses, I'm not going to call it a nice touch, but it's a necessary element to the track, because it just sort of showcases the very bombastic nature of Slim's rhymes. And again, he's going at pop culture. He's going at Christina Aguilera, Jennifer Lopez. That final verse is just bananas in the way it ends. I'm not even going to spoil it for anybody. And yeah, I tend to dig this track quite a bit. It's got a solid beat. The chorus is goofy. The lyrics are goofy. And like I said, it doesn't hit as well as The Real Slim Shady, or even My Name Is, if you want to go back that far. But it's fine. I'd say it's probably towards the upper middle of this album as a whole.
I'm right there with you. Like, I would say I'm back. I would put it in the same tier as, like, Who Knew and. Well, actually, yeah, that's basically it so far in terms of, like, a good album track. And, like, a couple of things I want to touch on. That you didn't lay down already because you already did a really good job, like, laying out the train tracks for this track here. The smooth transition between Remember Me and I'm Back is really good. Like, the way that Remember Me ends, where he's screaming, Remember Me, they call me Slim Shady. Like, like, it's really great. I love it so much. And I like, you talk about, like, and going after pop culture at the time. Again, we get another NSYNC diss here, and I do like that. It hits me in the feels. Not that I was a NSYNC hater, but I can remember 10-year-old Ryan at the time listening to this was like, yeah, man, NSYNC, they're poo-poo heads. And I'm right there with you. The kids during the chorus is it's a moment, and I don't hate it. It's a solid moment. Another line that I did like was the "read my lips" line, where "read my lips, what, my mouth isn't working." Like, I thought that was a pretty clever line there. And just the only other thing I want to maybe touch upon is you kind of hinted at it a little bit. Was at the start of the third verse where he's talking about, like, he's touching on the topic of school shootings, and this track here specifically within that context, M didn't really see, like, the big deal about including this section here, especially the album dropping a year after Columbine. And, like, for M, he mainly used, like, the concept of that as, like, an aggression to get away, like, to stress, like, relieve stress, exercise demons from being bullied in school. But, like, I thought that was an interesting moment. Still, like, maybe if that moment was taken out, maybe I would appreciate the track a little bit more, because it is a little bit distasteful, and I would, like, I'm not gonna dive further into that because I don't want us to get demonetized, and also we haven't got monetized yet, so I digress. But yeah, overall though, I'm Back. It's a solid song. It's right up there with Who Knew, where I'm like, if it comes on within, like, if I would do like a playlist listen, or if it would be coming on through, like, the sequence of the album, I could dig it. Wouldn't skip it, but I wouldn't make me, like, feel like someone hit me in the face with a fish, if you know what I mean.
Oh no, I totally know what you mean, but I would probably put a little higher than Who Knew, only because Eminem seems to be a little more relaxed and not as abrasive as he was on that track, or for that matter, Remember Me. So I thought this track was pretty solid.
So, booking on over to the next track here, which is the title track here, Marshall Matters. And so, for me, this track here, honestly, probably could have crept into my top 3. But, there were some heavy hitters at the top of, like, the pecking order here. And the reason why, like, I really like this track a lot, there's for a couple different reasons. The opening with the, like, for lack of a better descriptor, like, that western-ish production, it's very solid. And the, just how the chorus is used as a way to, like, settle everything down, but in that chorus, like, you get themes again about, like, M being like, hey, I'm just a regular guy, and I'm tired of people, like, asking me for stuff, and, like, it's a solid part. The there's a section in this track here where M rips off the LFO's Summer Girls melody. I'm not gonna really, like, talk about like how he rips it off, but like it's a beat for beat, basically the same kind of like a cadence there. So that's a great section. The 90 something cousins, like I like that wherever he's expanding upon like people always asking for something, like now that he's a celebrity, people like are coming out of the woodwork to be like, oh hey, I'm a cousin, oh I'm a cousin, oh like hey, remember like how you owe me something, blah blah blah. And like another section that I did like was the section where he's talking about like finding the magazine in a newsstand, and the the whole story behind that I was able to dig into. The magazine in question, this is a reference to Double XL, and not gonna get into the whole story behind it, but apparently like you got to consider like early 2000s, the concept of like a very skilled like successful white rapper was maybe a little bit like out of left field. So Double XL, like they were like, well, hey, no, we aren't doing no articles on no white rappers period. Then like after M got a little bit more famous, they did a story on him, but it wasn't an interview. The story said that he was a culture stealer and a KKK member, and basically just making up crap. And so after that, he went on a Double XL bashing campaign, which may not have been the smartest thing at the time, because in the position that he was in, he really needed Double XL. But like again, this is M's mentality at the time. Whenever someone comes at him, he's gonna be like have that edge lord in him, be like, hey, screw you, man, you suck. But yeah. And the way the whole track ends off with the guitar solo, like, it's a pretty solid track. Overall, like, I would put this in definitely the top tier of the album rankings here, the track rankings. But it didn't do quite enough to, like, knock my top three out of contention.
I'm pretty much on the same wavelength with you on a lot of this, because this track, to me, is a top-tier track as well. Some of the things you did not mention, the grunginess of this track, particularly the acoustic guitar beginning, the solo at the end, make it very like, it feels like a dude sitting on a sidewalk in the ghetto type of vibes. Like you just see it being like 95 degrees outside, Eminem in a white tank top, just being the regular dude, and that's basically what he's trying to say on this track, is that I'm just Marshall from Detroit. I don't understand why everybody thinks I'm going to change just because I'm part of the pop world now. And again, clearly he hates Y2K pop. He goes after Britney. He goes after New Kids on the Block. And to me, the highlight of the track, as aggressive as it is, the story about Insane Clown Posse, to the fact that he was able to tell a story with that much detail, and basically with an attitude of just talking as if he's talking to police, but make it rhyme. Like, that's just impressive. Like, it doesn't matter what side of that, beef you're on, whether it be the ICP side or the Eminem side. For him to just talk about that and put it in a manner that's so, like, has a great flow and very solid detail was very impressive to me. But yeah, this is probably... I'm struggling to say whether it's a top 5 track or not. It's definitely a top half. It's definitely a top half for me. Like, this song, Marshall Mathers, very much is a strong song on this LP.
Yeah, and I it's thanks to tracks like this that I'm really appreciative of like our show here, because like yeah, when I was younger I listened to like this track, but like it didn't resonate to me because like, well, like no offense to like younger me, but like my brain wasn't nearly as developed as it is now. But yeah, anyways, you so yeah, you ready to go on to the next section here where you get that skit where something's happening, and then you get the track "Drug Ballad." So
Yeah. I'm actually gonna do something. I don't think I've ever done it on this show before, or if I have, it's only been once or twice. I'm gonna make a small addendum to my rankings. I'm actually gonna go with a top 3 and a bottom 2. And this is my second least favorite track on the album, this skit that we're talking about, which is Kaniff. Because I get it, but I really don't want to hear this on record, man. I don't. I get he hates Insane Clown Posse. I get he's trying to be an edgelord, but I really don't want to hear this in oral form. No pun intended. Yeah, but enough about that. If you want to listen to it for yourself, by all means. Moving on to Drug Ballad. This track is a bit of a change of pace lyrically because instead of Eminem going after celebrities and topics of the day, this is basically a song about Eminem just using a lot of drugs. And it's weird because it feels like he's self-aware that he's doing the wrong thing, but he doesn't care that he's doing the wrong thing. Like, his realization that this could be destructive to him is so passive that it almost comes across as very tragic in a smart sense, very dumb in a dumber sense, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't. But yeah, I do think the beat on this track is really good, especially with a frantic piano that sort of goes bum, 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 bum. The chorus is pretty good too, because it seems like where the meaning of his self-awareness and his party lifestyle sort of coalesce into a very tight chorus. Yeah, this track is pretty solid. It did not land in my top 3, obviously, since we know what my top 3 is, but I think this track's pretty good.
I'm a lot higher on this track than you. Like, I'm just gonna come out of the gate and say that this isn't the third yet. This isn't my third favorite track. And also, keep in mind that we haven't even hit my bottom 3 yet. So
no,
and we're running the gamut here pretty soon.
Yeah, but, we're not tracks.
So Drug Ballad, like it could have. It's I'm putting it up there right there with the Marshall Matters song, the previous track. The previous actual full track. That it could have crept into my top 3. Like it almost did, but for reasons that I'll get into later on, it did not. So this track here, the singer that you hear, almost, well, I want to say complimenting M on a lot of sections here, but more specifically in the chorus. Her name is Dina Ray, and she's a singer that's worked on different projects that M has had, including being on his previous album in the track "Come On Everybody." It's been years since I've listened to that track, so I couldn't tell you what it sounds like. But she sounds really good here, and she compliments M in such an effective fashion, and she almost she does do a good job representing the concept of like addiction and drugs, and how much it has a hold on M. And I think with that, coupled with the beat that you mentioned and how well that goes over in the chorus, that really did stick with me pretty well. And even how the track opens up, where you get that organic studio moment where M's just like, "Hey, guess what? I ain't coming in yet." I thought that was a good moment. And a couple lines that I did like. I did like the whenever he's talking about get caught cheating, and then he'll be stuck with you. And on the first drive-by of the track here, I thought that was hey, if I get caught cheating with the human on human, you're stuck with the human that you cheated on the other human with. But on further reflection, I'm almost thinking that get caught cheating, maybe it's the concept of like, hey, I'm gonna get clean, but if he gets caught cheating, he's gonna be stuck with drugs because that other partner's gonna leave him. So I thought that was a cool moment. The other moments of the production edit did like the xylophone that's included in several moments in the track is a solid addition there. And like just like the overall like feeling of the track, it's very haunting in the sense of like it's very light and everything like that, but if you pay attention, it's a very dark track, and it kind of just I don't want to say highlights, but it exemplifies the mentality of like the party lifestyle, but like how haunting it is with the nature of what happens the morning after when you wake up and like the effects that it has on you. So yeah, Drug Ballad, it's a very solid deep cut for me. I really like it a lot.
I like it too. It's a nice change of pace because not only does it cut away from Eminem talking about everybody else and talking about himself, but it does have a little bit of a pop feel to it, and again has probably the most self-aware lyrics he's had since maybe Stan, honestly. But again, his flow is good, but he doesn't really like make it stand out a whole lot. Like he's just kind of, it almost feels like he's an autopilot on the verses. So that's kind of what kept it out of maybe anywhere near the top of the album. Like I would probably put it in the middle. Like I would probably say it's around like a 6 or 7, maybe an 8 as far as ranking on this album. It's solid. I do like it.
So, moving on over to Amityville featuring Bizarre. I'm gonna say that with this track here, the production is pretty solid. I do like that. And that's where the compliments end. Because this track is dog shit. Like, it's been a while since we've come across a track where I'm like, every part about this is garbage. Like I guess the production, I did throw out that compliment there, but the chorus is pretty annoying. I even knew, like, growing up, listening to this track here, that, like, this was my least favorite track because it just annoyed the crap out of me. And the guest verse from Bizarre is such a buzzkill. Like, it completely drains any momentum that this track was trying to have on the table. I'm not even going to get into his verses. And just the heightened energy from M in that, in his second verse, it's hit or miss. Like, he's yelling for the sake of yelling. And, like, I could dive into, like, further reasons of why this track really, really sucks, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna glorify the track any more than it has to be. Like, the lyrics are dog shit. I earlier in the album review here, I talked about M kind of like tiptoeing that line of being edgelord for edgelord's sake, or just edgelord, but like it's being really effective. This is just for edgelord's sake. Like this, like the guest verse is just high school jock stoner bullshit, and just like overall, like this track just annoys the crap out of me, and especially outside of the lyrical content in the verses, like the chorus again. Like I know I said it was pretty annoying, but like it's so grating to the ears. Like, why is this track a thing? I rest my case. This is my least favorite track. I think this is the angriest I've gotten in a track discussion in a while, by the way.
It is. And to be completely honest with you, I'm 100% in agreement. This is also my least favorite track on the album, too. Because you're right. The chorus is annoying. I don't even think the production's as good as you say it is. Like, I think the production is at least solid, but it's on the ordinary side. It doesn't save this track at all. But for as obnoxious as Eminem is, I think Bizarre is considerably worse. Because, like you say, it's edgelord, high school, locker room talk. And what makes it worse is the fact that you go from Eminem, who is trying way too hard to enunciate and yell, to Bizarre, who just kind of very calmly and very nonchalantly talks about the stuff he's talking about, with sort of this type of attitude. And not only do those styles not contrast at all, but on its own, it's bad. It's just bad. So yeah, like this track is very much going over the edge for no good reason. Like, Stan went over the edge for good reason. Kill You at least set a premise. This does nothing. It's a nothing track, and I'm right there with you. This is at the bottom.
I was hoping that this was going to be your bottom track, and I'm glad to hear that we share that, and yeah. So I think I'm ready to just move on from Amityville and go into Bitch Please, the sequel featuring Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Xzibit, and Nate Dogg.
Yeah, the sequel to apparently a track that was not by Eminem but by Snoop Dogg on an earlier album of his in the 90s. And let's just start by acknowledging the fact that this is probably and possibly one of, if not the best beat on the entire album. Like, that track just slaps. Like, Dr. Dre's production on here is absolutely magnificent. It's very much in the style of his album that he released at the end of 1999. And I would say it's just a classic Dre track in that regard. Aside from that, though, Dre's verse is good. Snoop's verse is good. Xzibit's verse is interesting because it's very brazen. It's very shocking. And the thing that this guy would then go on to host Pimp My Ride is just hilarious. Nate Dogg's hook's very good. And Eminem, his verse is solid too, although it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb because while Dre and Snoop and Xzibit are basically just boasting and being aggressive and being just sort of making this look easy, Eminem definitely goes back into that whole edgelord vibe at the end. Not necessarily in a bad way, but in a way that's just kind of, it definitely makes him look like the, white guy rapper that some of his detractors were saying he was. And also there's a little bit of line in the song that's not very well received and is very outdated morally. I'm not going to get into that line, but you could probably figure out what it is. But yeah, now, I actually like this track a lot. Like this, I would probably put this as either a 4 or a 5, honestly, if we're ranking these tracks top to bottom, because the beat is so good and everything else about this track just flows so well. Like, this is just a solid, great posse cut, but it just eked out of my top 3.
I'm a bit lower on this track than you. I mean, like, I will agree, like, the beat is really good. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg's verses are solid. No real standout moments there, though. Like, for me, it's just basically just vibes. Xzibit's verse is fine, but the Puff Daddy line aged like sour milk. I mean, how was he supposed to know? But he probably knew. But the the moment that you were kind of hinting at with M in his verse there, I know the word that he was using. I have mixed feelings about that part in general because, like, while, like, that word is just, like, just awful, but the way that it's delivered, like, the previous line is, it's just me being me. Here, you want me to tone it down? And the way that he, like, drops the tone in his voice, like, I thought that was effective, but the use of the word is what it is. Yeah, like, for me, we're starting to get into the back half, the tail end of the record, and for this to be a posse cut that's mainly just vibes, like, and there's just questionable moments here or there. Like, it's a good track overall, but right now we're starting to get into, like, album fatigue, if you know what I mean. So, like, if this track was sequenced, like, we swap Remember Me and, like, this track in its place, like, I might be a little bit higher on it, but, like, it's a fine track, though. Like, I have real, like, it didn't do enough to, like, pop into a bottom track contention for me, so.
I can understand that. Yeah, it's I think maybe what made it stand out better for me is not just the fact that the beat is so good, but again, talking about juxtaposition, this is coming off of Amityville, so for a track to be this, smooth and very, again, good vibes compared to whatever Amityville was, I think helped it out quite a bit. And for the last few months, for recent memory, it was part of my regular playlist because it sounds great in the car.
So, yeah. The next track, man. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
this track, Kim,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, yeah. So for those of you who have not listened to Kim, it's a what a song, man. Like, so a fun fact about Kim, in the clean version, this track doesn't exist for obvious reasons. The track in its place is, the track called Kids, and we're not covering that today. We're covering Kim, because, this is our show and not yours. So, but yeah, just the way that this track starts out, where you get the sense of something is wrong, because you get Marshall talking to his daughter Haley and being like, "Oh, Wally, look at you! Well, I'm so proud of you." But you get this menacing noise in the background, oh my god, something's about to go wrong. And yeah, stuff hits the fan. The whole concept behind this track here is I'm just gonna put it as plain as day. This is Marshall losing his mind, finding out that Kim cheated on him, and he kills the person who she cheated on him with, and you hear the process of him taking her out to the woods to kill her. So, and the way that it's delivered, it's crazy effective. I've never heard a track like this since, to be honest with you. I mean, I could be wrong, but the crazy production behind it, the passion behind it, you even get the little moments here or there where you hear people just, what it sounds like people just throwing furniture across the room. That's very solid on the production front. You get the effects of him driving in a road down the road, him in the forest, and at the very end, after the event occurs, you get the effects of him dragging the body and putting it into the truck and getting back into his car. It's a very incredible track. I really have no notes about it other than that. The chorus is pretty solid, and just the way that I do like the little tones underneath the vocals and the chorus. I thought that was really good. So yeah, this track is incredible. Apparently when the actual person of this song was the actual person, the actual Kim in real life heard this track, she thought M was literally insane, which, I mean, hard to argue that. But just overall, just an incredible song. And as much as I've said what the song is about, I have to be honest with myself. We've completed the trilogy here. This is my third favorite track off the record.
I respect that because, disclaimer, before I go into my thoughts on this song, this is a very morally reprehensible song. The subject matter is stuff that nobody should consider, and if you do, you should probably seek some therapy. Let's just get that out there. But if you're able to tell fantasy from reality, and I'm thinking at this point, if you made this far in the album, you have. This is clearly a fantasy. It is a very explicit fantasy. It is a very gruesome fantasy. It is a very horrifying fantasy. This is horrorcore at its most objectively horrifying, because you could talk about the likes of, ICP or, maybe stuff by NWA, but no, this is very much a drama written out at its goriest. And even though it is a very gruesome fantasy, again, like you said, Ryan, the engineering on this track and the sound effects that are being used are phenomenal. Like, you could very much envision this song as it's going on. And as chilling as it is, it does tell the story very clearly. The only real knock I have on the song is the chorus, and it's not so much a knock as it is a weird curiosity or a nitpick, which is that it goes, "So long, you did me so wrong, I don't want to go on living in this world without you." Which is a good sentiment and a solid hook, but very much not what the song is about, because the song is about Eminem very much choosing to move on without Kim. So I thought, and it didn't even really hit me until today, where it was just like, wait a minute, something's up here. But that's just a minor nitpick. I think the song is very much a cinematic track, and definitely in the top half of the album. I just don't think it's as good as the other three, but that's just my personal preference.
Yeah, and just a thought that I had right now about this track here, and just Eminem as a whole, especially like in his earlier career and earlier in his discography, specifically around this point. You think about a track like "Stand" and how M wrote that to show the critics what's up, and how he can make a serious song. Like, I feel like M as a whole, when it came to like moments like that, and he's still doing tracks like this, which is basically like a horror movie within a track. Like it goes to show that if he can do Stand, but he could do Kim. Like, the reason why he does Stand is to show that it's yes, whenever it comes to entertainment and art and music, like if someone's literally describing shooting up your ex-wife and like just graphic nature, dark stuff in the first place, yes, it can have that effect on people where, like, if you run into the wrong person, like, it could really change somebody's life for the worse. But also, it's your responsibility as being a grown person to, one, make sure you know what your kids are listening to, and also realize that if you're going to listen to a song like him, and if your significant other cheats on you, your response isn't to murder her, because most people won't do that. So I know M has had his critics over the years, but through several moments throughout this LP, he's addressed that with saying, like, hey, this is society as a whole. And, like, I kind of stand with that. I don't know where I was going with that tangent, but I just really just thought about Stan comparing that track to this here. So,
yeah. No, I get it. And, yeah, obvious. And that goes for a lot of the stuff on this album. Like, it shouldn't be your personality. It shouldn't really be anybody's personality. Because even though there's a lot of stuff on here that's, very bold and very powerful, again, a lot of the stuff on here is pretty morbid. But again, that hasn't stopped the movies from being morbid. That hasn't stopped television shows from being morbid in the past. Art is art, and art could be whatever it wants, whether it be clean cut or, in this case, this. And this is very much not clean cut, but it's a very well-produced song for what it is.
So, are you ready to move on from Kim, as much as it's kind of paying me to do that, to finish off the record here, starting with the penultimate track, Under the Influence, featuring D12 or D12.
Yes, Under the Influence, featuring D12. And considering Eminem is part of D12, this is basically just a D12 track. And I'm just going to come out and say it. This is the album trackiest track on this album. And granted, some of that does have to do with the fact that it comes after Kim being as wild as it is. But it's also just very ordinary and very much a lighter version of the track that preceded Kim. Because D12 are not Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. They never have been, they never will be. I think they sound alright. I think Bizarre sounds better than he did on Amityville. Not that that's a high bar to clear. He still sounds relatively unenthusiastic, but it does pave a bit of a preview for their big single several years down the road, which would be My Band. So I thought this track is okay, but I really, really, really don't have much else to say about it because it's a posse cut. It's fine. Eminem sounds like an edgelord as the world turns.
So, Matt, did you notice something about at least my review here so far,
We haven't.
and the amount of tracks we have left?
So we have 2 spots left to fill in your bottom 3, don't we?
Yeah, and guess how many tracks we have left?
2.
Yeah. So, oh man. So I'm gonna start with the positives with Under the Influence. I like the concept of the hook being introduced right away, and like how it's basically gibberish, and then M is just like, oh hey, that translates into if you don't da da da, you can I'm not gonna really go into what he's suggesting, but yeah, I thought that was a cool moment. And in the I forget who has the bar here, and I'm gonna vamp so I can find it really quick on genius.com, genius.com, and it's the section that actually Bizarre has in the third verse when you get that effect where he's saying, letting the record skip, letting the record skip. Like, I thought that was a cool thing. That was a cool moment. I was a fan of that. And also M's bar about being a WAPS in a hospital, lost and singing the F out of everybody that he comes across in the halls. Like, I thought that was a cool thing. Cool, use of a wasp, the nature's buttholes in society. But why is this in my bottom 3? At this point, we've heard several tracks in the record about M being like, hey, if you don't like me, you can suck it. Like, I don't need to hear this 17 tracks into a record. At this point, I get it. You're a self-actualized man, and you don't care what people think about you. And I appreciate your braziness, but oh my goodness, a song that has a hook like that, it did rub me the wrong way. The second guest verse from Bizarre, outside of the letting the record skip part, again, was a buzzkill. Maybe I just don't like Bizarre as a rapper. I'm curious to see if he's been in other projects that I've enjoyed in the past. But and just the whole song as a whole, it's a gang rap song that you were talking about, gang posse cut, where each person gets a verse and they get the chance to prove that they can cause the most violence. And I'm like, you call this the most albumy track out of the most album tracks, and that. I agree with that, but there's also moments here where it drags down, especially just the whole vibe of the track. So yeah, between this and Criminal, this track I like less. So it's my second least favorite track on the whole record.
Wow. All right. I can understand that. Yeah, it's for his, again, juxtaposition, I think, has a big part of it. It comes after Kim, but it doesn't really do anything to separate itself either. Like, the Real Slim Shady could have been an ordinary track, but it wasn't. Who Knew could have been an ordinary track, but it really wasn't. But yeah, this track is pretty cut and dry. Come in, come out, paycheck, move on. And in that respect, I say we move on to Criminal.
So the final track on the album is Criminal, and yeah, it's my third least favorite track. Big shocker. I mean, for those of you who can math, congratulations. Wow, that came across as pretty oddly aggressive. So I'm gonna start with the positives. I like the opening where it just seems like Emma's coming out to the stage and he's making this very almost seems like a very epic kind of monologue, and the way that it like jumps into like the chorus there. I thought that was a really nice moment. The chorus as a whole has a really nice flow to it. Also, we haven't talked about in the review so far that Eric Cartman from South Park, he makes a couple random appearances in the LP. So he makes an appearance in this track here. And the part where M takes drive-by shots at pastors is great. Where he does like, "Please Lord, this morning is Jesus, heal the shout, help us destroy these demons," and he also makes a comment about prostitutes and the pastor's wife being sick in the hospital, but that is what it is. And then also I also did the section where M is talking about his mother did all these drugs and this baby came out and basically turned out to be the way he is because of his mom. I thought that was a nice moment there. Yeah, but the reason why this track sinks into my top three is that I don't know. Again, listener fatigue is a real thing, and I don't want to say I can't listen to long albums because I literally listened to an album today by a band called Sprain where they have 24-minute tracks and it's just a guy just wailing on a guitar. I digress. So, it's not my attention span that's an issue. It's the repetitive subject nature that we find here with Criminal that gets to be a little bit of a drag after a while. So, there's that. And the part where they put a skit right in the middle of a song, it made no sense. Oh, yeah, I'm a criminal. And let me show you how I'm a criminal. You don't need to do that, man. It didn't stick the landing there. So yeah, just overall though, this track has enough fun moments, but at this point in the LP, it's not sticking the landing for me. So yeah, Criminal, least favorite track on the record.
Yeah. For me, this track is pretty ordinary too, and it's kind of a dud to end the album on. Not so much that I would consider it a bottom track, but definitely repetitive, like you said. Repetitive with Kill You and Who Knew, and even throw Under the Influence in there. Eminem's basically finishing where the album started, talking about topical humor, making references at his mom again. I did like the part about the pastor. I did think that was pretty funny. And I agree with you. That skit, it does kill the momentum of the song, number one, and also it's just so unrealistic. Eminem's not going to do that, and it does kind of boil things down. I didn't hate it, but it was definitely just kind of a unnecessary moment. And then the track just ends, and then the album just ends. So, yeah, I think you could probably have put a better track at the end of this album than this or Under the Influence, but that was Eminem's decision. That's what, has been on record for 25 years.
Yeah. So we've come to the end of the record here, and there's only one thing left to say about the review, man.
We did it.
We did it, man. We went up to Eminem, and we were like, "Who's the real Slim Shady? Also, your name is Marshall Mathers. Tell me about your life story." And he told us the story.
He did. He told us his life story and the life story of many others throughout this odyssey of a rap LP. I'll go first. This album. There's a few ways you could look at it. First of all, from an objective standpoint, most of the beats are really good. The audio production is magnificent. And Eminem, for as much as he is an edgelord on certain tracks, does rap very, very well. Is this the most morally conscionable album of all time? No. Does it have to be? No. Is it the best rap album of all time? I wouldn't say so. I'd probably put Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back a little higher. because that album had a lot more innovations on it. But this album does have its innovations too, on songs like Stan, songs like Kim, songs like The Real Slim Shady, songs like The Way I Am. You see Eminem at his peak. You hear Eminem at his peak. Flowing, coming up with verses that are both funny, insightful, and, very much pushes the listener to the edge of the discussion of, what does it mean to be a celebrity? What does it mean to be a fan of celebrity? What does it mean to live? What does it mean to live in the suburbs? What does it mean to live in the year of Y2K? A lot of it is dated, but it definitely is a relic of its time in more positives than negatives. So yeah, I can't give this album a 10 in good conscience because there is a hefty number of moments where things are kind of ordinary, or in the case of Amityville, just plain bad. I'll throw Ken and Kaniff in there as well. But if you want to document on what the edge of living in 2000 was, you've come to the right place. I'm going to give this album a 9 out of 10.
All right, so I can respect that. So the my feelings about the record, um, it was great for me to come back to this album. Like I said, like this was one of the albums that I grew up with, for better or for worse. The clean Walmart version, obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning of the review. The singles, like you mentioned, have stood the test of time. They're iconic. They're solid. Like Stan in its own right has, like, I think VH1 like listed it as like being the 14th greatest song of all time, which is a really great accolade and critical acclaim notion in that regard. But like even outside of the singles, you get like deep cuts like Drug Ballad, Marshall Mathers, and who knew, like solid deep cuts. The other stuff for me is too edgelord. Amityville, like I don't want to ever hear that again in my life. I'd rather just, throw my ears in a cheese grater and just experience that pain other than hearing that garbage again. Like you said, the album's very much of its time. Some of it has aged pretty poorly, but others have been like, very timeless staples, like The Way I Am and Stan and The Real Slim Shady. And yeah. Like for me, like I'm not gonna be as high on the record as you, but I'm gonna take it like a couple of steps down. I'm gonna give it a solid 8 out of 10.
So between my 9 and your 8, that makes the math pretty easy. Our average is an 8.5 because math works, everyone. And as far as next album recommendation, it's super simple for me. It's the sequel. It's the Marshall Mathers LP from 2013 because, and it's not just because it is the sequel in name, but also in a lot of context because there's songs on there, particularly I could think of off the top of my head, like Rhyme or Reason, where Eminem just goes right into talking about his father instead of his mother. Songs like Berserk and Rap God, where he just showcases his skill yet again. The Monster, which was a big radio hit, which, showcased his staying power. And you mentioned Kendrick Lamar earlier. He works with Kendrick Lamar on this album with my favorite track, which is Love Games. So Marshall Mathers LP2 by Eminem, I recommend it.
Me too, man. So the first time in the history of the show we were recommending the same album, because for me, like I wanted to recommend this LP. I could also went with The Death of Slim Shady, but I never listened to that, and I don't really have the motivation to. But like there's no other, it's very rare that we get such an organic, quality sequel of an album. In the history of music, I can't think of another example of that. But the way that they're able to continue the story, I was listening to a little bit of it before hopping on the call with you, and the way that it opens up with Am talking about hey, I'm gonna try to battle the ghost of my past, and I'm trying to make sense of everything, so I'm gonna go back to where it all started. It's a really great track. There's also another track on there, Headlights, featuring the lead singer of the currently defunct band Fun. And in that song, he, apologizes to all the negative things he said about his mom. So, like, that was a great track there. But, like, yeah, it might be a bit of a cop out, but, like, I have to stay true to who I am. I am who I say I am, and the person who I am is going to recommend the Marshall Mathers LP2 by Eminem if you've enjoyed the original.
Yeah. So again, if you've listened to the Marshall Mathers LP and you like what you heard, check out the sequel. It's as simple as that. So what a review! What a review that we've gone through. That was pretty heavy, but definitely I think nice look into what things were like in 2000. 25 years ago this month.
Yeah. I like, not to, like, pat ourselves on the back too hardcore, but, like, I feel like we did a really good job. We called out the not so good stuff. We also gave the album its praises and the roses that it does deserve, my friend.
Exactly. So one more order of business to kick this review into bed. Ryan, what we got cooking next?
So next month is Pride Month, and it's meant to, like, help, celebrate the members of the LGBT plus community. And yeah, like, so I'm gonna propose it for the entire month of June. We draw from artists and bands that, like, have members of that community, if you're up for it.
I am very much up for that.
So for me, I'm gonna pull a Captain Phillips on you, and I'm gonna not give you a choice in the next album that we're gonna recommend, and it's for a very, very specific reason. So the next album that we're gonna review, it's gonna be an album by a band called Against Me, and the album is called Transgender Dysphoria Blues.
All right. You know what? I'm up for it, man. I'm up for it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited for next week's review, man. So, if you, dear listener, have not listened to, or it's been a minute since you listened to Transgender Dysphoria Blues by the band Against Me, do yourself a favor. Check out that album. That way you can have opinions about the record, and then you can also have opinions about the opinions that me and Matt are going to be bringing to the table. But yeah. Just, I'm very excited for next week's review as an Against Me fan, and, like, it's just the way that I am.